Hey everybody, I hope you're having a good day. I'm going to be away for a few days visiting family in Florida and South Carolina. I'm excited about the trip, but not looking forward to the humidity. That's going to be gross. While I'm gone, I have 2 or 3 videos lined up for you all. I also wanted to remind you that you can listen to these stories on Spotify under the Dark Omnium podcast. If you enjoy the music I create for these stories, you can find those songs on Spotify and iTunes under Somnium Music. Today's video is a compilation of otherworldly beings and ancient god-type stories, similar to Lovecraftian tales. I'm curious to know which one is your favorite, so I'll be in the comments like usual. Have a great day. At this point, there is little that will make any difference. I can protest that I'm a victim, the same as everybody, but I can't ask for your forgiveness. I'm recording this to tell you how it happened, though it won't matter either. It's the only thing I can do at this point, so it's what I'm doing. I found the guitar in an old pawn shop in Boston. The proprietor was a caricature of a pawnbroker, a bent little old man with a hooked nose and wisps of white hair around his ears. His face creased with a permanent frown from too many years of feigning disgust at the stuff people brought in. I didn't bother speaking to him at first, just walked up and down the narrow aisles between shelves stacked with endless junk. I thought people brought their valuables to pawn, but this guy had somehow acquired piles of rusty old hand woodworking tools, random glassware and salt shakers, chipped china and flatware that wasn't silver. I felt curiously drawn to a battered old wardrobe that looked like it had been built of leftover tongue-and-groove siding. I almost opened it but decided against it, assuming it was filled with moth-eaten mink coats, judging from the rest of his stuff. I felt his eyes glued on me, waiting for me to try to lift something. With my mohawk and torn jeans, I often got that look, but given the worthlessness of this crap, it was almost insulting. I said, "Screw it," and headed for the door. "Can I help you with something?" he asked, husky and suspicious. I looked him straight in the eye. "I doubt you have a guitar." He almost smiled. The corners of his mouth twitched, but then they seemed to forget how to smile and gave up on it. "I might have a guitar," he said, "for the right price." This didn't sound promising. He didn't say anything more. I wondered if he was expecting me to fork over money sight unseen. "Well, do you or don't you, old man?" "I do, kid," he said, which I had to respect after I'd called him old man. It was only fair he called me kid, but I liked how he said it. Deliberate, making it clear he was giving me back what was mine. "Look in the wardrobe right behind you. Don't open the case, just bring it over here to the counter." It was the wardrobe I almost opened. I did now and found it contained nothing but a dusty rectangular guitar case. I humored the old man, carried it over to the counter, and put it down so it would open toward him since he obviously didn't want me to handle it until I'd bought it. He turned it around, flicked open the clasps, and pulled it open, shrinking down behind the lid. Later, I would note that the maneuver protected him from the sight of the guitar. I doubt he really understood what he had, but he was not totally ignorant. At the time, though, I just put it down to showmanship. Inside was the most amazing black guitar I've ever seen. It was so black it looked like there was no guitar there at all, just some silver frets and strings stretched across nothing, a guitar-shaped rip in the universe. I reached into the case just to touch it, to be sure there was a guitar there. The old man closed the case part way, nearly trapping my hands inside. I didn't pull away. No, he said, his lips curling back from his teeth. "Not here. I can't buy it if I can't try it. Take your hand out of the case." I did. I wanted the guitar. I had to hear it first. But frankly, if I didn't play it at all, I'd still have bought it if I could afford it. It was that cool. He shut the case and fastened the latches. Take it into the basement. There's an old amplifier down there. You can plug it in and play it, but see here, the volume on that amplifier is set on 2, right? It stays on 2. Sure, I said. Whatever. He laid a bony hand on a red fire extinguisher at the end of the counter. See this? You know what this is for? Putting out fires, you'd think. But check the pressure gauge. I looked at the dial on top. It was all the way down on empty. The only thing it's good for is bashing out the brains of people who don't follow the rules. Got it? The volume stays on 2. Somehow, I wasn't too frightened at the thought of this old man trying to assault me with a fire extinguisher, except for the thought of trying to convince the police that the punk had acted in self-defense when he broke the little old shopkeeper in 2. It didn't matter. I didn't need the guitar to be loud to tell if it could play. I took the case and went through the little door down the steep steps. It crossed my mind that I was probably doing something stupid, going down into this crazy old man's cellar. But frankly, the door was so flimsy I could turn it into kindling if he tried to lock it behind me. All he did was yell down at me about keeping the volume on 2. In the basement was a chest freezer, a big converted coal furnace, some broken furniture, and a vintage amplifier. I put the guitar down on the freezer and opened the case again. Down in the basement, it looked even blacker than before, if that were possible. I touched the guitar just to assure myself that it was real. My hand stopped, so there was definitely something there, but I couldn't really feel it. It had all the friction of black ice, but no sensation of cold. A sensation of vertigo crept over me as if I were going to fall into the nothingness. Impulsively, I grabbed the strap that at least felt like leather and lifted the guitar so it hung from my shoulder. It had weight like a guitar. The sensation of vertigo left me when I wasn't staring right at it. I fished a patch cord out of the case, plugged it into the amp, and switched it on. I turned the volume up to 2.5 just to screw with the old man, then touched the strings. Just the tiny sound a guitar makes when the club owner pulls the plug on your show. I only had a moment of disappointment before I remembered that this amplifier probably had vacuum tubes. It would need to warm up before it would play. I waited a minute. The amplifier hummed with potentiality. Then I struck the open strings. Or I meant to. I hit them one after the other in a slow arpeggio to hear how far out of tune it was. But on the first note, my fingers froze. It was indescribable, a deep, resonant tone that sounded like it came out of the primeval past, a note imagined by alien races that had looked down on Earth when all life was just slime on the bottom of the sea. It unseated my bowels from the rest of my viscera and set them floating uneasily. I took a deep breath and plucked out the first 7 notes of Stairway to Heaven. It seemed like the right riff to try. The guitar spoke with the voice of God, but not the all-forgiving God of the Gospels, nor even the strict, pendant God of evangelicals. This was the Old Testament God, mighty and awful. The God that shook mountains and spoke in thunder and trumpets. The God that smote the Adamites by the thousands. My head swam. I was terrified, and at the same time, I had to have this guitar. I would pay whatever price the old man asked. I snapped off the amplifier and forced myself to walk slowly up the stairs. The door was unlocked. The old man was back where he had been, behind his counter, adding rows of figures in a little black book. I tried to act casual. "How much you want for it?" It came out as a shaky, tense whisper. So much for acting casual. The old man would have to be deaf to not know I'd pay whatever he asked. But maybe he was deaf. He didn't even look up. I repeated myself louder and less desperate. He glanced up, surprised to see me standing in front of him. Then he took an earplug out of one ear. If he hadn't heard me, he knew what I'd said. $2,000? My stomach, already dangerously unmoved, flipped over again. That was 4 times what I told myself was my maximum price when I set out guitar hunting. I drew a deep breath and tried. "I can't pay more than—" He interrupted and thumped a hand-lettered sign on the wall behind him. "Do not try to dicky. All prices are firm." On another day, I knew that just because you put something on a sign doesn't make it true. I could probably work him down at least a little. I could go out, find an ATM, and withdraw all I could put on my card. I could go back to the old room I rented in the converted two-family, count out the money, and come back in the morning with $500 and give it to him as if it were $2,000. But I didn't want to wait that long. I was afraid the old man would change his mind and refuse to sell it at any price if I didn't buy it now. So I said, "All right," and pulled out my wallet. $2,000. When he saw I wasn't bluffing, he looked worried. "Cash only." "Sure," I said, walking backward to the door. "I'll be right back." I had $2,000 and a bit more in my savings account. I would have to hit 2 ATMs to get the maximum from each. When I came back with the cash, the old man made me wait while he counted it twice. I stood holding the guitar case by the handle, feeling like I might pass out from the strain of waiting. Finally, he finished counting and wrote out a receipt. He gave it to me and put the money in a strongbox under the counter. He looked up, stared straight into my eyes, and said, "Don't bring it back." The fear and weariness in his voice made me hesitate. I almost asked him what he meant, but I didn't. I just turned and left. When I got home, I plugged in the guitar and started playing for hours, making music like I'd never made before. I had always been good, but now I was incredible. My fingers flew over the fretboard, and the music that came out was pure magic. But then, strange things started to happen. Shadows seemed to move on their own, and the air felt thick with an unseen presence. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike. One night as I was playing, I felt a sudden chill in the room. The temperature dropped and I could see my breath in the air. The guitar strings felt icy under my fingers. I stopped playing and looked around, but there was nothing there. I tried to ignore it and continued playing, but the feeling only grew stronger. I felt like I was being pulled into the void, the darkness around me closing in. Then I saw it, a figure in the corner of the room, darker than the shadows, with glowing red eyes. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before, an ancient being from the void. It started to move toward me, and I felt a paralyzing fear grip me. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. All I could do was watch as it came closer and closer. In a panic, I grabbed the guitar and smashed it against the wall. The figure disappeared, and the room returned to normal. But the guitar was gone, shattered into pieces. I felt a sense of relief, but also a deep sadness. The music was gone, and with it, the incredible talent I had gained. I knew I had made a terrible mistake.
Since then, I've been haunted by the memory of that night. I can still feel the presence of the ancient being, watching, waiting. I don't know what it wanted or why it appeared, but I know that I'll never forget it, and I'll never play the guitar again.